Hi guys, welcome to my video on how to make ginger beer. Well, words can't describe just how damn good this ginger beer is. It is phenomenal. Aside from the fact that it's alcoholic, it's just, the flavour is second to none. I just want to explain, a little bit about making it so you can then have the knowledge to adapt the recipe to how you might like it. First thing to understand is that yeast consumes the sugar in the brew and it will then create alcohol. If you use only white sugar, it's all fully fermentable, which means the yeast will eat all the sugar and it'll just be converted to alcohol. But there will be no sweetness to your ginger beer. I think the first 2 times I made this recipe, and that's what I did, all white sugar, and the result was a really fiery ginger beer that had no sweetness. And if you're like me and you've got a sweet tooth and you want a bit of sweetness, the only way to do that is to substitute some white sugar for brown sugar. Brown sugar is not fully fermentable, meaning the yeast can only eat, say, 60% of it, which means you'll get less alcohol, but there will be some sweetness to your ginger beer. Second thing is how fiery you like the ginger beer. I like it quite strong. So the first few times I made this recipe, I used 2 kilos of ginger. I think one time I bought the ginger and I took a while before I finally made it, and some of it had gone rotten. So I think I used about 1.5 kilos, and it was still absolutely gorgeous, but not quite as hot. And to be honest, I preferred it. So I've dialed back the ginger since the first time I made it, and just used the 1.5 kilos instead of the 2 of the original recipe. I think the original recipe called for the juice of 4 to 8 lemons. I'm not sure which. I've changed that to 2 lemons and 2 limes. Sort of a subtle difference, but I prefer it. So yeah, that's what I've stuck with. But now you sort of understand what effects the sugars will have. You can adjust the recipe to your taste. If you like it sweet, add some brown sugar. If you like it dry, just use white sugars. Yeah, that's it. I'll now walk you through making the ginger beer. So there you have it, 1.5 kilos of peeled ginger. Next, I've got to grate it. Well, if you can do all that grating without cutting yourself like I did, fair play to you. If you do cut yourself like I did, just try and pick the bits of bloody ginger out. So now we're on to the juice of 2 lemons and 2 limes. Now, an absolute bonus of this is that once your ginger's fermented and you're ready to bottle it, you basically separate the ginger from the beer. And the first time I made this, I composted the ginger, but the second and third time I reused it. So the second time I made ginger jam or marmalade, whatever you want to call it, and the third time I made ginger wine, and some of that wine I turned into sparkling wine, and to my uncultured taste buds, it really tasted very similar to champagne. Absolutely brilliant. So you really do get your money's worth out of the ginger, although it's quite expensive. Well, not quite, it is for what it is. An interesting note is that home brewing used to be a predominantly female pastime. Only recent years that it's become more of a male hobby. But my dad's always done homebrew, and his dad and my mum's dad, bit of a family tradition. I think my dad started making beers back when he was in the RAF, but now he just makes wine. I started brewing beer and subsequently made a few batches of wine. I've got my apple cider vinegar on the go there, some gooseberry wine and apple wine. So, ready for the next step. Okay, so I've got the sugar divided into two pans of simmering water. I'm going to pour half the sugar in one pan, the other half of sugar in the other pan, let it dissolve, then split this by eye into the two pans once it's dissolved and simmer for 15 minutes, and that's it. Okay, so these have simmered for 15 minutes. Now I'm going to put them into the bucket where they'll be fermenting. This is a UK 5-gallon 23 litre fermenting bin. And the key thing with brewing, the most important thing, is cleanliness. So pre-boil, you want things clean, but they don't have to be sterilised because the boiling will sterilise them. But the bucket and anything that goes near the brew from now on has to be completely sanitised, and that can be done either using sodium metabisulfate solution, or if you run out of that, worst case scenario, bleach works pretty good. So I'll get these in here. Okay, so that's my simmered ginger and sugar, lemon juice and lime juice. Now I'm just going to top it up with water and I'll be back. Okay, so that's been topped up to 5 gallons. Now some brewers use dechlorinated water, others use mineral water, others will pre-boil the water. Personally, I've never bothered with any of that, and I just use good old tap water. I'm going to test the temperature. There you go, 29 degrees. So too warm still to add the yeast. I'm just going to loosely put the lid on top of this container. Once it gets down to 20-25 degrees, I'll drop my yeast in, and then I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Oh, actually, next thing I'm going to do is take a gravity reading. Okay, so I won't be back with the hydrometer reading because I've broken two actually. Just gone into the drawer to get it, and both shattered. And they're about, I think I've been through about 4 now on that awful combination of heavy-handed and clumsy. So I've just ordered a new one from Amazon. That will be here tomorrow. So as you can see, the new hydrometer's arrived. Cleaned and sterilised the jar. Sterilised and cleaned the hydrometer. Now you won't be able to see the reading, but it's about 11.5 on this scale. So I'll give it a couple of weeks, check for signs of fermentation, and towards the end of that I'll refill this jar, and this will be gone further down as there's less available sugar to ferment. Once it's stable, no more fermentation taking place, I'll then rack the ginger beer off the ginger and bottle it, and I'll bring you back for that process. So it's been a couple of weeks since I started this. It's been fizzing away quite nicely. Now I doubt the camera can pick that up, but as it's fermenting you'll see loads of little bubbles. There's still quite a few bubbles chugging along, which means it's still fermenting. So I'm going to leave it a little longer. Once there's no visible activity, I can take the gravity again. So yeah, once there's no visible fermentation going on, I'll take another gravity reading, wait a couple of days, take another one, and if it's stopped going down, it's probably ready to bottle. And when we bottle it, the yeast basically doesn't die, it just stays dormant when there's no sugar. So we rack it off, put it into bottles and add a little bit of sugar, and that little bit of sugar the yeast will consume and produce CO2, which will carbonate the bottles. So that's where we're at. We'll be bottling it pretty soon. One thing worth noting is to keep a diary of your brews. It's always good to have the recipe written down, you know, so you can change things, make a note of what you like and don't like, record the start date, because the amount of times I've forgotten when I actually started something is ridiculous. And then you want to record the gravity at the start so you can compare once the fermentation's complete. Once it is complete and you've got a final gravity reading, you can do a little bit of maths and work out the sort of rough ballpark of the ABV of the beer. So yeah, I'll be back in a few days and we'll bottle this stuff. Right guys, it's time to finish this ginger beer off, and I'm pretty much ready to go, so I'll show you what's cracking. So 23 litres, I'm going to lose a fair few litres to the waste ginger and yeast. So I've got 40 bottles cleaned, sterilised, ready to go. This is a bottle cleaner, which is damned handy. I've just got, well, shoots a jet up into the bottle. Now these are, I like to rinse it with cold water before I bottle, just to get rid of any nasties. Iced plum wine, a good vintage from last year. So here I've got the bottling bucket. This goes into the bottle. It's got a little lever there, depresses on the bottom of the bottle and fills it up. Here I've got the bottler, just clamped to the work surface. I had it screwed when I had it in the garage, but needs must. And then bottle caps that I'll sterilise before putting on the bottles. So I'll get the lid off this and rack it off into here. And there you see, the bucket you're racking off into has to be below the other bucket, obviously, otherwise it won't flow. This is just relying on gravity. But this is, all this kit's sterilised and good to go. So that's it. Wait for that to fill up and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've got 20 litres of ginger beer, and I'm not going to lie, that was a bit of a faff. It's been a while since I made it, but once you get down to a low amount of liquid and just ginger, it blocks up the siphoning nozzle, so in the end, kind of just run it through a sieve. At the very bottom there's going to be yeast, and you don't really want to get all that yeast in your beer, so just go slow, and once it goes cloudy, I'm going to leave it. So I've got to carbonate the beer, and to carbonate it, we basically just add some sugar. So although the yeast has dropped to the bottom, that simply means that that's exhausted, but there's still more yeast in the brew itself. It's just dormant because there's no more food for it. So now we add more sugar and it will start fermenting again. So I'm just using a beer bottle's worth, adding 130 grams of sugar for 20 litres, which will give me the right sort of carbonation level, and bring this to the boil, which will A, sterilise this, and B, dissolve the sugar. And once it's boiling and dissolved, I'll then add that back into the mix. But this bit is nice and easy. Unfortunately, there's no automatic stopper, so just keep an eye on when it gets to the top. Sterilise the bottle cap, give it a rinse. Bring the bottler down to the bottle as close as possible. And there we have it, one bottle of ginger beer, 39 odd to go. So there you have it, 40 odd bottles of ginger beer. Take about a week, 2 weeks max to carbonate at this sort of temperature, and into the fridge they go. I hope you found this interesting, helpful. Hope it motivates you to have a go at making your own ginger beer. You certainly can't buy anything like it from the shops. You know, it's yeah, just a totally different ball game, this stuff. And you know, the great thing as with cooking is you can just, you know, make it and adjust to your own taste, which is yeah, what I've done. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this. Cheers.